Hi there. This video is for entertainment purposes only. Thank you for visiting my channel once again, and if you're new, welcome. Please do not forget to press the subscribe button, give a thumbs up for like, and please do share. Now, this is the fifth video of a series of videos that I'm doing on the playbook rather of supremacist ideology and practices. And believe me, that playbook is a long one because I think we will be doing about 9 or 10 of these videos. And they're rather long videos at that. Now, before we begin our discussion, let me introduce myself. My name is Winifred Davis. I have been a shaman, psychic medium, traditional and spiritual counselor and healer for the past 37 years, almost 38. By September 21st, it will be 38 years. I've been at this a long time. I'm also an author, a poet, an essayist, and a former spoken word movement performer. Now, I subscribe to no religion. When I say I subscribe to no religion, I mean I subscribe to no religion. I believe in universal justice and truth. With the impostor justice of man, there's an exception to every rule. With universal justice, there are absolutely no exceptions to its rules. And with the truth, there is no my side, your side. The truth stands unopposed. Now, please remember that I'm not here to lead anyone, and I use my hands, I gesticulate a lot, and that's just me. As I said, please remember, I am not here to lead anyone or to convert anyone for that matter, just as I don't want anyone to lead me. I believe that each man must evolve according to his own light. I can only just deliver the message or the messages that I get. Now, my duty is only to my conscience. And that conscience, that is the light I was given at creation when I was given free will. That conscience is what guides the free will I was given. Now, each of us was given free will at creation with a conscience, the light to guide that free will. It is that conscience that makes each of us responsible for our actions. We cannot blame a devil, demon, king, country, general, parents, or the bully. The buck stops with us. We cannot abscond that responsibility. Each man is responsible for the well-being of his soul. Nobody else. Pastor cannot and is not responsible for the well-being of your soul. Neither is the Pope. Each man is responsible for the well-being of his soul. And I will say here, which is a bit redundant, his own soul. As I said, my duty is only to my conscience, and I'm not here to lead anyone, just as I don't want anyone to lead me. Now, I'm just a messenger, an imperfect messenger, delivering messages from the collective. I'm just a vessel. Now, who are the collective? The collective is comprised of members of the higher and highest hierarchies. That includes the archangels and my guides, some who have been with me from my creation. Each of us has the ability to communicate with our guides and with the members of the higher and highest hierarchies, including the archangel. So it's not presumptuous of me to say that. Now, Consequently, because I get these messages and visions, and they come in different forms, whether I'm awake or in sleeping state, wide open trances, and as a shaman, I travel back and forth in between the spiritual and the temporal world. When I get these messages, what I have to say sometimes might be rather harsh or brutal. Now remember, I'm just a messenger, and I am imperfect, as each and every one of us in this earthly plane is. There is no perfect being on this earth. Don't let anybody fool you. Now, only by facing that truth, and what I call looking in our mirror of self-reflection and admitting to that reflection that we see, which is sometimes not a very pretty one, believe me, I know, can we bring equilibrium to our soul. So we gotta face that reflection. Facing that reflection, we must, so that we can advance up that ladder of soul restoration. As I said, I'm not here to lead or convert anyone. Please do not feel free, or do not freely interpret what I say. If you don't understand what I say, drop a comment, or the question, I should say. Leave the question in the comments below, or email me. That's also, my email is also listed below. If I say the sky is blue, I mean, even though it's the sky and it's blue, I didn't say sky blue, I said blue. Not marine blue, navy blue, turquoise blue, just blue. That incorporates all shades of blue. And forgive me, I gesticulate a lot. I use my hands a lot. Now, if I say that there was or is a tiny fish in a small aquarium, do not freely interpret what I said. Say exactly what I said. Because by the time you reinterpret and somebody else reinterprets and it gets to the 10th person, the tiny fish has become a big old whale, which is not even a fish but a mammal. And the small aquarium has become a vast ocean. Now, some get it, some silly. In other words, just the way I get it is exactly the way I deliver the message. Okay? Now, I started this channel to discuss the truth, not the theory, but the truth. That is reincarnation and its many facts. I call out injustice and folly when I see it, and I couldn't care less whether you are, well, I'm black. I couldn't care less whether you are my black brother, or whether you are my North African brother, my white English brother. I couldn't care less. Folly is folly and injustice is injustice. At the end of the day, what we wear in each lifetime, we wear many masks. So that's race, religion, color. They're totally irrelevant and impermanent. In other words, black in one lifetime, white in another, Hindu in one, Christian in another, or pagan in another. Doesn't matter. Each of us is without a mask in the spiritual plane. The masks are of the earth, and we use them to separate and segregate. And that's what supremacist ideology and practices, that's what it does. It plays on those masks to advance its ignoble agendas. Now, at times I will discuss at length current events as I see fit, because they're relevant to that truth that is reincarnation and its many facts. This is a very special period what I call a cup runneth over, a period of greater transition that only happen ever so often. Please see my books listed below for an in-depth discussion, or I should say in-depth discussions of these topics. When I receive messages and visions, I will share them, some of them anyways, as my guides direct me to with you. Now, I'm going to make a couple of comments. The supremacists in America, in the American Manchurian regime right now, are led by incompetent fascists. And at the head of that regime is someone who knows nothing, but, as I will discuss later, too arrogant to learn, because supremacists usually believe that they know everything. Now, they're even too stupid to do fascism properly. They're totally incompetent, even at doing fascism. Not even false flags they can execute properly, believe me. And the billionaires, and we know some of them have strip mined the American economy and are now fleeing to greener pastures, whether it be Argentina, New Zealand, or wherever. They believe that they have strategy, but strategy without wisdom will always fail. That's usually why supremacist ideology and practices always fail at the end. Strategy without wisdom is no strategy at all. Now, I have some messages that I got. Planning afoot that any Gulf state that does not comply with America, to use it to invade Iran or do as it wants. It's gone through some of the meetings. It's been broached. The subject has been broached from my bird's eye view when we travel and listen, snoop in the spiritual sense. They've talked about it, that they would topple some of those states. They don't have many people. They have a lot of expats, but not a lot. Other than Saudi Arabia, the rest don't really have very many, well, let us say indigenous people in those states. So they've talked about perhaps toppling them so that they can use them, and maybe even sometimes occupying them. So like this is kind of like an Operation Barbarossa phase. Now that's the message I got. Now you will also notice that there's a plan, I don't know how far along it is, to link the Israeli armed forces with the U.S. armed forces. I don't know if that's treasonous or what, but who knows what's going on there now anyways. Now, as I discuss in my books, Thoughts on the Past, Politics, Gender, and the Octopus of Strange Bedfellows, also in Two Faces, Cyrus's Bill of Rights, and Hitler's Aryan Paradise, I discuss Ernst Röhm, who was the founder of the essay The Brown Shirts in Nazi Germany. And he has been reincarnated now as the whore of Babylon, the golden calf, but the gold is not real. It's fake. The man with the cloaca mouth and the chaos agent, as my guys, some of those names gave to me, was Ernst Röhm. He's the reincarnation of Ernst Röhm. And I go step by step proving that. I also go step by step proving the different events, significant events in Nazi Germany has, if you want to say the events have reincarnated, they've been repeated at this time, not just in America, yes, and all over. And I go step by step proving it in those books. Now, I talk about the slaughtering fees, the butchering fees that have spread all over, so they can add up those numbers. Now, another thing, and then the Night of the Long Knives, for example, talked about that. We talked about the Beer Hall Putsch, which was January 6th in America. And so we have different events that are exactly, they're like verbatim, or at least in rhyme. History, right? Repeats itself, they say in rhyme, but sometimes it's verbatim. Now another thing, another event that proves the point here is that linking together of the Israeli armed forces. That's a rogue army of hooligans and vigilantes. No rules. Everything is on the table. No red lines. No ethics. No morality. And so it becomes like it is the essay, the brown shirts, or I think it's Ster Mabtalung, that Ernst Röhm founded in Nazi Germany. It had up to 4 million people, members, and it was actually larger, much larger than the official German army, because after World War I, according to the Treaty of Versailles, only 100,000, the German army could be no more than 100,000. It could have no more than 100,000 members. So up to 4 million that this hooligan, this paramilitary, this group had, the brown shirts, that helped Hitler get into power, where they went around and they made unalive, they beat people. It was just a whole bunch of hooligans. The same thing that you see occurring now in the West Bank with the settlers and with the Israeli armed forces in Lebanon and in Gaza and in the West Bank. Same thing, same MO. They were the ones who put Hitler in. And so now you imagine them joining, and Ernst Röhm had wanted them to join with the German army, the brown shirts, but Hitler wouldn't do that because he knew that if we want to say regular society would not look too kindly on that. And at the same time, he knew that if he gave to Rome that power with his vigilantes and that the rogue army, right, where they did anything, that one day they would overthrow him. So in that sense, Hitler had some sense. He would never have put Rome into any position of power. Use him because he can rile up the crowd. He could have a good rally, and he had lots of rallies. And then these people who didn't believe in law and order would do all the dirty work. So that's what's gonna happen now. So now you see In Nazi Germany, Hitler wouldn't permit that. But now it looks like it might come true, and the wish has been realized of joining the paramilitary or the rogue hooligans called the IDF and the American Armed Forces, which they're not perfect, but at least they used to have some sort of guiding principles. So here we see another event verbatim happening, and might occur because the politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, it's Israel first. Who cares about America? The Republic, in any case, that is America. Now, they also said to me, actually, and by the way, another thing I forgot when they were telling, that they did have a comment on this fact, is that America believes, those who are also pushing it to join both armies, that this will accelerate the second coming, where they will do their part and Israel will soon get rid of all the Greater Israel Project will get accomplished soon, because if the armies join, I suppose, then, they'll have more boots, American lives, to go into Lebanon and Iran and elsewhere, and they can say we'll have a ground invasion and all of this stuff. And so they'll realize that, and then Christ, what an abomination. Jesus the Christ will come, after. So they don't have to wait too long, because, well, I guess they don't know about divine timing, but we'll get to that in another time. Anyhow, let me get going here and read. Now, Turkey, they said to me, should not put so much stock in the F-35 that they've been yearning for more than a decade, I believe. They should look elsewhere. It is not worth the sacrifice. So that's the message for Turkey. Well, and they also said there will be many Waterloos within the next 6 months. Less than a year, there will be many Waterloos, but I will not get into that right now. I've memorialized some of the Waterloos, but it's not to be revealed at this moment. But they have been memorialized, so remember that I said that. I also did say in, I think it's my last video or the video before, I was trying to remember the Jamaican saying, and I think I was talking about America coming from way over yonder, or as they would say in Jamaica, oi oi, coming from way over yonder and going all the way into Western Asia to make trouble. They should stick to America and look after America's business, or as they would say, the time you're there abroad, a fast in other people's business, for your day backyard a spoil. So you're busy. And that's what a lot of empires or wannabe empires do. They're busy, meddling everywhere. And then they're home. Their country is falling apart. Well, that's America right now. It is falling apart. So that Jamaican saying, the story goes like this, right? It says, lick a finger. So that's your little finger. Lick a finger, say, come we got thief. Ring finger, say, come now. Middle finger say, suppose say them catch we. Lick pot, the finger that you use to lick the bowl that you had the batter in to make the cake. Say God no day, and big finger say, look how far, that's your thumb, look how far me day. So little finger says, let's go steal. And then the ring finger says, all right, let's go. The middle finger says, suppose we get caught. Suppose and say them catch we, right? And lick pot say, God will help us out of our troubles. But the smart thumb says, you see how far away I am from all of you? Don't get me involved in your problems. So that's what I said. I forgot how it went. But, that lick pot, lick the batter, I don't look too kindly on that. I'm kind of finicky when it comes to certain things. Anyhow, please do not forget the children in Gaza, that there is no peace there. And the genocide and the ethnic cleansing continues. It is getting worse by the day. And we're going to be talking about the kids today. It's getting worse by the day. There's no peace. The privation, the starvation, and the children, targets, of course. Targets for the state of Israel. Don't forget Sudan and the millions there. Genocide, starvation. Don't forget Yemen, especially since 2015, and all those children. Don't forget the DRC or any place where there is conflict, zones of conflict. Don't forget. Every child, and we're going to discuss that, has a right to play, to food, to shelter, to an education, to be loved, to be safe and secure. And it doesn't matter whether it is the children of the perpetrators like Israel, and when the blowback comes, they're also affected. Or whether they are the children who are also the victims of the victims in zones of conflict, like in Gaza and Lebanon, the West Bank, the children who perished in Minab and elsewhere. Children shouldn't have to go through all of this because of adults and their forever war. Their stupid forever wars looking for power. If you have to defend yourself, then you have to defend yourself. But I'm speaking about the aggressors looking for power. Now I'll just remark here that in 1936, Germany held the Olympics. And they managed, because they had to show the world that they were decent. They managed to minimize their disregard for non-Aryans. And by the way, there was no segregation in the Olympic Village. We look at America's behavior to the Iranian team during the World Cup. Despicable. That speaks for itself. Hitler, as I said, would never have entrusted Rome to lead anything except a vigilante group. Look what America did. America, well, some people would say it's getting what it deserves. Why do I say that? Those who did not vote and those who decided to experiment with protest votes. Believe me, even Nazi Germany knew how to be a proper host, even though he didn't shake Jesse Owens' hands, Hitler that is, or at least pretend at an international event. America should no longer be the host or home for any international organization or events. It has lost the right to do so with its schizophrenic politics. 4 years it's okay, and then the next 4 years it's not. Unreliable. However, prophecy must be fulfilled. Please, once again, read my book, and I should have it to show you. Two Faces, Cyrus's Bill of Rights, and Hitler's Aryan Paradise. Now, I'm trying to figure out here, what am I going to do here now? No, of course not. I know what I'm going to do here. Now, we'll just add here with the earthquake that happened in Venezuela. That has become, obviously, another butcher shop or a butcher field on a live field. Because, they say that aid is being blocked, and there's all this politics, and the American Manchurian regime is calling the shots and doing a lot of nonsense, and the people who are suffering, they're not the priority. Let's put it. So that's another venue to take out more undesired peoples like brown peoples for these white supremacists. They never know when to stop until something stops them. And they're committing and allowing many genocides to continue. But anyways, please remember that this video is for entertainment purposes only. Now, once again, I have walked a mile in many shoes during my many lifetimes, including this one. I've been there and done that. So it is with moral clarity that I speak. It is not a question of it is easy for you to speak, because you will look at me and, I will say, well, why are we doing this? We shouldn't be doing that. And some people would say, well, it's easy for you to speak. You're not in this situation. No. Throughout my many lifetimes, and including in this one, I have walked many a mile in many shoes. And what do I mean by that? We can talk about hunger. We can talk about sexual harassment, whatever it is. Committing spiritual mistakes. I have walked many a miles in many different shoes. And as I like to say, and as I say once again, it is with moral clarity that I speak. And I'm going to read so that I'm not looking back at my paper because I keep talking. I just want to have a good flow of information. Humility opens the door to learning. Judgment, which I said before is supremacist ideology and practices, closes that door to learning. Supremacist ideology and practices is too arrogant, has no shame, and believes that it knows everything, so it refuses to learn. When we are humble, we'll say, I don't know everything. I don't know this. I don't understand. Please, teach me. Help me to understand. Explain to me. But when we are arrogant, we say, oh, what do you know? I know everything. I don't need you to tell me anything. And that's judgment. And so we shut that door. And that's why usually those who subscribe to the supremacist ideology and practices playbook usually do a lot of incompetent and stupid things. And they're totally unaware. Totally unaware. They do not have the ability to look in that mirror of self-reflection. And once again, they have no shame. As I said, I've been there and done that. It is with humility that I speak, not from a perch of moral high ground. My beliefs are not vanity projects or governed by what is popular or the latest dish or fashion, whether it be justice, social justice, war, the plight of children, and the forsaken have been a part of my DNA throughout my many lifetimes. And I have an upcoming book detailing all those some of those lifetimes that are relevant to this lifetime. I do not like to speak about myself. I don't even like to take pictures. I'm a secretive person. I've known people for many, many years. And when my brother died, they didn't even know I had a brother. And believe me, I was so close to my brother. We'd spent hours on the phone. At one point, his girlfriend, who later became his wife, thought that's not your sister. You could never be on the phone with your sister for hours until 4 o'clock in the morning. But it was. That's how close we were. But I've said, and I've said this before, I have part of my self-soul contract in this lifetime is not to be secretive. I have to step from out of the shadow in order to be an example, a lived example, a living proof of some of those facts that are the truth of reincarnation. I had to step out of those shadows. Be doing this video because if you left me alone to myself, I would just write. I'd never show my face, as I haven't done on the first 7 videos I did. You'd never see me. My kids always laugh because I don't like pictures. I don't take pictures. Rarely do unless I have to. But I had to put myself out here so that you're looking at me right now. And so I have to state examples that would just stay within myself. I wouldn't be speaking about it. But here we go. I want to finish my Neptunian journey, the last part of it, in this lifetime. And so I'm doing what I agreed to do eons ago. I'm doing it now. Now, as I said, it has been difficult to do this, but do it I must. As I said, I've known hunger in this lifetime. I starved to death in a lifetime eons ago. But I've known hunger in this lifetime. I've encountered racism. I'm black. Sexism. And other masks, isms. But I'm not a victim. And I'm not telling you this for pity or to whatever. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that I've walked many a mile in many a shoe in this lifetime as well. Now, I've put my life when I was 16 years old in danger to cover a story because I used to report. I was a reporter for a newspaper. I was a very busy teenager doing all kinds of stuff. A man who was almost made unalive. They had burnt his home and his shop, his business place. It was a hate crime. And my dad didn't even know that when he took me to the hospital to interview this man and take a picture, that's what I was going to do. Well, he figured it out when I got back in his van. And he said, "Oh, Winnie, Winnie, Winnie." Because he knew that was me. As I said, I remember having a job. I was newly married, and it was $50 a week being an administrative assistant. And the director, who was much older than I was, he was about 40 years older, I think. Well, you know, as they would say, put question to me in Jamaica. And I shut him down right there. How dare he? Not because he was older, because my second husband was 30 years and 6 months older than I was, and we were together for 25 years until he passed away. But how dare this man? I didn't care the fact that he was educated or anything. And so, because I put a kibosh on his advances, he felt that he could handle me, was rude, he was boorish, obnoxious, and I quit. That $50 was going to help to pay the rent. I quit. And then again, I love fruits. And I didn't have much money. And it was during the time of apartheid in South Africa. And I remember seeing those young people, some as young as 14, coming to Nigeria and telling their story at the Second World Festival of Black and African Arts. Telling their story, and it was Soweto. They were part of that Soweto uprising, and they had to flee their homes and go to neighboring countries. And I thought, some are younger than I am. I was 16 then. And boycott. I was maybe 19, 20, and it was still going on. And as I said, I didn't have much money, and even if it were the cheapest thing in the store, I would not buy it. Not much to do, but little make enough. And all those boycotts that all we little people helped to do eventually helped to get rid of apartheid. So I know I've been there, I've done that. And as I say, I've been hungry. And that's when I learned that cornmeal, if you didn't mix it with flour, and of course you have corn flour, they put, I can't remember the name of what they put in it to make a tortilla, you know, the flour that you use to make tortilla. I didn't know that just cornmeal by itself would never make fried dumplings. I didn't know that. It would just disintegrate in the oil. So I know that. I've walked even in many more shoes, but this is enough at this time. Now, I have put, as I said, my life in danger to cover a story of a hate crime when I was fearless, when I was just a mere teenager. I've been at this for a long time. The world in which we live is mostly gray, but some things are black and white without even a speck of gray. In those instances, there is no moral equivocation when it comes to justice and truth. There is no more moral equivocation when it comes to genocide, cruelty to children, or anybody else for that matter. No matter the masks of those children, whether they're black, white, pink, or green. We cannot hide behind these things and say, as some people say, oh, the situation in the Levant, in Palestine, it's complex, you know. No, there's no moral equivocation for the starvation of children, or the butchering of children. And to my African American brothers and other black brothers, you cannot complain about the criminalization of black children in America, or the lack of empathy shown to black children in hospitals, because they believe that black children are adults and they can bear more pain than white children. You cannot complain about that. And yet still you support the genocide, the criminalization, the targeting, the sexual abuse of Palestinian children, or excuse the slaughter of the children of Menab. And that goes for people like the politicians like Cory Booker, or the former U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, or Greenfield Thomas. You cannot. No. Human rights, for one, is human rights for all. Once again, we cannot be selective in our empathy. And it is with moral clarity that I speak, and I say the following that I'm going to say now, and I know I've taken a long time, but this is one of my pet peeves. And I shouldn't even say pet peeves. Something that touches my very soul. Me now go hold me mouth a ground fi talk, left me make me talk, as my grandmother Ella used to say. Now, on August 19th, 1982, the UN, the United Nations General Assembly, established the International Day of Innocent Children Victims of Aggression. 1982, August 19th. Why was this day established, we might ask? This day was established in response to the great number of innocent Palestinian and Lebanese children who were victims of Israel's acts of aggression. Rather than learn, Israel now does this. The targeting and abuse of children in front of the whole world, and laughs at those who dare criticize. And they have so many people in Europe, the politicians I'm talking, and in America, black, white, brown, who support this. Unfortunately, there have been other butchers like the ones we see in the war on Gaza, and they come in all masks. Now, the United Nations just issued a report that tells Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Cory Booker, the EU, and all the cruel apologists and pretenders to the throne of virtue that no amount of spin can change the truth. In our hubris, we believe that everyone else is stupid because they're not in our class, or because they don't know, they're not educated enough. They don't know anything about geopolitics, or geopolitics rather. So we can feed Kool-Aid and tell them that what they're seeing with their own eyes and the torrents of rain they are feeling, that it is nice and sunny. Israel has become so high of its own arrogance that it now does not even try to hide, even when its apologists try to billow the smoke. Now remember, when I did what Zionism is out of the mouth of Zionists, they said it. Like people like Ariel Sharon, they said, they didn't make a show of it or try to hide the fact that children are targets, because they said men, the danger of men, Palestinian men, is limited. But the danger of women and children, those two, especially children, are the greatest dangers, and so you have to get rid of them. So they said it. It's not a secret. Just that they billowed the smoke because the people in the West wouldn't want to hear the truth. Now, as I said, the truth has no my side, no your side. It stands unopposed. There's no moral equivocation when genocide stares us in the face, and even less so of babies and children. The intent to destroy the Palestinian people in whole or in part. These miscreants have and are still trying to brainwash the world. The media try to put false information on Wikipedia and textbooks, starting from in the 60s. Well, Wikipedia, of course, it wasn't in the 60s, but in textbooks, people like Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father. The United Nations just issued their report, as I said before, in which they have stated that Israel has targeted children in Gaza, and the intent is to destroy in whole or in part the Palestinian people. I am not shocked. I knew the children were targets when I started writing at the beginning of this war on Gaza. That's almost 3 years ago. I memorialized the messages that we would arrive here. They're in my books and in my poetry from those times, and memorialized elsewhere. What we are seeing so clearly now was clear from the very beginning. After the events of October 7th, it's nothing new, and we don't need 4 eyes to have seen that. It's just history on rewind, repeating itself, and has repeated itself throughout the ages. The poems, which I will read, a few of them, shortly, reflect some of what is now plain. And remember, I wrote those, I was given those by my guides from back in December 2023. The collective, including my guides, especially 2 of them, my grandmother and one from the Great Persia, and I won't say the names, are in the forefront because they're the protector of children. With the members of the warriors, they're part of the members of the warriors of justice, and I've spoken about them. They're some of my guides, like Umar ibn al-Khattab, the one who gives me the messages for Western Asia, the one who gave me the message about the UAE and some of those Gulf states, and said that the UAE was the lone sheep that had allowed itself to be separated from the flock by the wolf in its bosom. This warrior of justice is also and has also stressed that there shall arise the energy of Saladin to unite the Muslims who are so disparate now, to unite them because they are an endangered species. They face an existential threat, not just from Israel or the Zionist Christians in America, but from a lot of different groups, and I discussed that in my book. And remember now, I subscribe to no religion. Now, as I said, as I began digging even further, when I wrote what I wrote and that children were targets, and it is just before I finished my book, Thoughts on the Past, in 2025, that I dug even further and I was led to those quotes, the hard facts that showed me that yes, it was so. And sometimes when we get messages and we sometimes doubt, all we have to do now, we can go to the actual historical record in the temporal, through the temporal lens, and we will find confirmation of the messages that we got. Now that's another lesson I'm giving you when it comes to reincarnation and its many facts and how to navigate them. Now, we get messages, and as I said, we write with inspiration, and then when we go to history, we get the proof of the hard facts. And I show how to do that in my upcoming book, which I thought I would finish at the end of April, but my guys are not ready yet. I think maybe they might be ready soon on how to do this. I go into the process of doing it so that some of us, others, can also see the processes involved in some of what I do, or others who do what I do. Now, this targeting of children is even more widespread among Zionists, and especially the Zionists in Israel and their followers in America, than it was in Nazi Germany. Now, Himmler, and I mentioned that in my book as well, Himmler had some thoughts about the children as well, but in terms of being widespread as a policy, Nazi Germany is far behind Israel. And this is one of the reasons I will say that they are the perfect poster child, and they outdo Nazi Germany in terms of the Playbook of Supremacist ideology and practices, and it kind of explains why my guides want me to concentrate there. Now, this is nothing new. We seem to, as I said, forget that it was due to the actions of Israel in Lebanon and the occupied territories that the United Nations declared on August 19, 1982 as the International Day of Innocent Children Victims of Aggression. So 1982 and now, that's 44 years. Once again, we heard various statements in my last video that reference and part of the record as to why children and women, and especially children, were a danger and should be eliminated. We hear it and we heard it from the leaders in Israel. We have seen the videos posted by the soldiers. We heard Mr. Herzog, the current president of Israel. They labeled children criminals and little snakes. I have the references to all of this listed in my books. Israeli textbooks are filled with dehumanizing statements of Palestinians, including the children. Imagine a small child, and this was recent, toddler, kidnapped and had cigarette burns all over his body to trap his father. Imagine taking a baby from his mother and returning, whether days later, I can't remember, and this is just in the past couple of weeks, returning that live baby you took from his mother, returning his corpse. But then look at what Israel did to the thousands of Yemeni, Jewish, Mizrahi children in the 1950s because of their darker skins. Golda Meir did not want to hear about the marginalization and suffering of the Mizrahi. And if Zionists would do this to their own masked Jew, we must not be surprised at what they do to Palestinian children. Another masked moment when masked Jew gives way to subset of Jew, masked Jew, and Ashkenaz. So the mask divides. You have masked Jew, and then you have masked Zionist Jew. But then you also have masked Jew, so masked Ashkenaz Jew, Mizrahi Jew, Sephardic Jew. So it gives way. And Golda Meir, she didn't want to hear anything about the Mizrahi, the darker Jews. Because as far as she was concerned, they complained too much. Right? They were at the bottom of the totem pole. That's before the Falashas entered. They're even lower. No. She didn't want to hear anything. And, of course, let me get back to reading. The Mizrahi are also very guilty right now, and they help to perpetrate the atrocities against the Palestinians. And I am sure that you have the Falashas who are at the bottom of the totem pole of the hierarchy, the least of the different subsets of mass Jews, and on the lowest level of the hierarchy, who have also participated in all those atrocities in the occupied territories. Most of the Likud party are made up of these dispossessed Jews. Of course, most of the leaders are Ashkenaz, the white European Jews. So you see the hierarchy. White European Jews and all the rest are below. There are a few, a rather rare breed of true moderates. It's hard to find any type of moderate in Israel. What they call moderate, you gotta wonder. It's relative. Now, this is one of the reasons why this conflict was chosen and why it is providential, because it is the perfect poster child, as I said, of supremacist ideology and practices, the reason why we are here on earth. Many of us have also chosen to continue our expiation to counterbalance the entry of an overflow of miscreant souls. We're all miscreants to a lesser or greater degree. Miscreants that I label here are the ones that are of the greatest degree of souls who have blocked out for the moment their conscience. who have also, these miscreant souls have also reincarnated because they view this as the opportune time to seize the reins of power, satisfying their lust and greed. There are also many rescue souls doing what they have always done while also expiating. I'm a rescue soul, but I'm also expiating my incorrect deeds, my spiritual mistakes at the same time that I am in my capacity as a rescue soul. In the temporal lens and also in the spiritual lens. Now, there are also many rescue souls, as I just said, doing what they have always done while also expiating. For they too have committed spiritual mistakes. So none of us is perfect. Yes, there is genocide occurring in Sudan, and there have been so many genocides since man's sojourn in this earthly plane that we might say that the number is infinite. However, what is happening has been planned and has been a slow rolling one for almost 1 century, perhaps longer. Not perhaps, but longer than the Nazi project. This conflict once again shows what happens when supremacist ideology and practices is left unchecked, condoned, indulged. It always leads to never again moments. It is testament that like spirits attract, contrary to the laws of magnetism that say like poles repel. We can see that while the Zionist project was always one of enslavement, remember now 20% of the population, it's okay for them to stay to be the slaves, the carriers of water, hewers of wood, and waiters. Land theft, negative exceptionalism, ethnic cleansing, displacement, and genocide. There were more souls who went to live there as refugees. That's at the beginning, right? Jews needed a home, so they went as refugees. Of course, many were unconcerned with the plight of their fellow refugees in Gaza. For example, after 1948, the Nakba, when people were pushed from their homes and their farms, everything taken away and pushed into what we now know as Gaza, and it was the Quakers who had to help them get shelter, sanitation, and what have you. Those Quakers, the light of the two faces of America, the face of the light. Those who were extreme or moderate, of those who first went in to what we call Israel, attracted, so I'm telling you how they enable and facilitate extreme and more extreme souls to reincarnate in the society because they indulged certain injustices, and because they indulge, they attract spirits. They facilitate other spirits who want to reincarnate, who are true miscreants. They facilitate them and indulge, so they give birth to them. And so it is an ever-growing affectation. And now the society, that's why Israeli society is now so extreme, because the first ones who were refugees, and they had a blind eye to what was happening to their brothers, the Palestinians. So, okay, you will indulge it. So souls want to enter the earth now because there are those who will indulge their delinquency. So they're born to them. And so they grow and they attract more miscreants, give birth to those. And that's why we see even the young people right now in Israel, they're probably amongst the worst of the miscreants in doing those spiritual, those incorrect deeds. That's how it works. Now, there's an overflow of psychopathic and sadistic energies, many of them reincarnations from World War II. Many were also from other terrible times in history because of the enablers. It is like when we think negative thoughts, we attract negative souls. Then we think more negatively and attract even more negative souls. And the downward spiral continues ad infinitum. This is what is happening in Israel now. Once again, the state was formed with nefarious intent. We must be ever vigilant not to condone or indulge bullies or delinquency. This war has more than any other at this time illuminated the mirror of self-reflection to allow us to separate the wheat from the tares and reveal the pretenders to the throne of virtue. This war heralds the great awakening as described in my books, not in the sense that the religious system describes it, because remember, I subscribe to no religion. I use the term in my own way, in the spiritual sense, because, well, I don't have any other term to use, but it's not the same spiritual awakening as with the religious people. Now, this awakening is the awakening to wisdom, to understand the knowledge that was from the beginning, that each of us is responsible for the well-being of his soul and accountable for our own actions. We must stop looking for leaders and shepherds. We must learn that we are eternal spiritual beings experiencing temporary human lives. We are tenants on the earth. There is something greater than us, the fatherhood of God. We love and respect that something that is greater than us by loving ourselves and our brothers, and not just by words, but in our deeds. There is no spin with soul, for the soul knows our intentions. Words belie thoughts that actions reveal. You cannot fool the soul. Do unto others the divine principles as you would have others do unto you. Have them. Them, my guides say, not others. Grammatically, others, but my guides say them. That which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. There are no exceptions to these principles. We will see, so a man soweth, so shall he reap. Play out in Israel, as it has and is still playing out in America. Only truth and reconciliation, mass unconditional forgiveness, and mass love. Only that can be the salve, the balm to what's going on. No matter their heinous crimes against even newborns after taking them away from their mothers, and that they left those newborns on hospital beds, covered in wood, collapsed ceiling, metal, broken glass, and shrapnel. Guess what? They're still our brothers, for we are all brothers in this brotherhood of man. Now, these are 4 poems from a collective of 14 poems that I was given. Okay, now I did do a video. I think it was probably video number 5, I believe, with all 40. But just with this report that came out, I wanted to mention these poems. And they were inspired, as I said, by the warriors of justice, including my grandmother and one of my guides, long time guides, who lived in the Great Persia. And I'll tell you, my grandmother, she loved children. She was my mother in my lifetime in Tudor England. And I was her only surviving child. And she was looked upon as a mother to a lot of the people who would come to our house that my husband would bring home. Now, my grandmother, she was tall, about 6'1", well-shaped. She was an imposing, striking in features, striking woman with dark eyes. And when those eyes were not pleased, you knew it. And she was fearless, and people respected her. She loved children. She was stern, but she loved children, and she was always taking children. Even when my mom was young, she was always growing up with other children who were not my grandmother's children, but their parents probably couldn't afford them, so she'd always have 1 or 2 of them. And when I was born, I saw that, and before she died in her 80s, there was one little girl that she had there. And she didn't like when people abused children. And I remember as a little girl, there was a man who was very cruel. And he strung his 6-year-old son upside down on a tree and was whipping that child. And when my grandmother heard, she went up to that house and she said, "Mr. So-and-so." She grabbed the strap that he had and she just said, "Mr. So-and-so, you cut him down. And don't you let me hear of you doing this again. If not, you will have to reckon with me." And believe me, he knew what she meant. She didn't care who you were, and as I said, she commanded a lot of respect. And he'd also abuse his wife, and she would have to find refuge in our home. And my grandmother put a stop to that. And she believed that children should be treated with respect and fairly. She was stern. Don't pass your place. She was stern, but she was loving and affectionate. And she believed you had a right, children had a right to education, to be safe from harm. And what she would do, because she had a shop, and when the children were coming from school, she would always have prepared what they call bulla. It's kind of like a cake, flat cake, or a bun, and sometimes cheese with it. And she would cut it up into portions so that the children, as they passed by the shop coming from school, they would have something to eat, because she knew some of them were going home and that would probably be the last meal they would be having for the day. Thank God they offered free lunch at school, and that's due to Edward Siaga, the former late Prime Minister of Jamaica. That was my grandmother. And she believed in education. And so when I was, I think, 5, I wanted so badly to go to school because I could read by then. I could read when I was 3 years old. And I saw my older brother, he was a year and a half older than I was, and my much older cousins going to school. And I wanted to go to school. And she said, well, you can't go because, well, they didn't have any preschool in the country. And so she asked her brothers or her sister-in-law, who was the inspector for the area, and it was in another parish actually, because she didn't trust the school. She didn't think they had quality education in the school that was closest, and it was 5 miles away. I said, okay, they'd make arrangements, and they did. Because she says when little children want to go to school, let them go to school. And so I was happy. I trekked with my little feet with my older cousins and my older brother, and I was off to school, walking 5 miles to school, 5 miles back, and I didn't complain. That was my grandmother. She's a lover of children, and I learned from her. And that she, along with my guide from the Great Persia and the other warriors of justice, they gave me 14 poems, and I'm going to read 3 of them, and as I said, they're available in video number 5, I believe. But I'm going to read them now, and I didn't show my face then because, as I tell you, I don't even like taking pictures. So I'm going to read them now because of that report that came out, and you will see everything in those poems are as clear as day now. And some people, if they don't read history, would never have guessed that it would have arrived at this point. Now, those poems are to be found in a book that I published in February 2025 called A Broken Record, History on Rewind. War Through the Eyes of the Soul in Poetry. So it was published about 4 months after October 7th. In that book, I explain why war exists and when all wars will end through the eyes of the soul. It recounts many massacres, genocides, and war through the ages since I started paying attention, which was the first one I was familiar with was, I think I was 6 or 7, was the Civil War in Nigeria. And I would see, because we used to get the newspaper, even in the country, and they'd have little magazines and what, and I used to read them, and I'd see the children with the distended abdomens because of starvation in Biafra. So I've been watching this for a long time. Now, in that book, I've included a collection of my poems over the past more than 50 years, since I was a tween, that I've been writing, recounting, it's a collection about justice, war, struggle, and protest. And as I said, a collection of poetry on war, justice, struggle, conflict, freedom, since I was a tween. So that's more than 50 years. I've been at this for a very long time. So this is not a vanity project or something that's in fashion or in vogue. And I followed this conflict in the Levant from 1973. Now, Miss Thomas Puss clock is about to stop. So, our duty is to take care of our children. Every child belongs to each of us. Once again, it is our duty to take care of all of them, no matter the masks. First poem, Grunt from Center Being. So much pain, so much sorrow, so much suffering, so much carnage, so much wanton cruelty, so much gratuitous violence, so much acquiescence, so much indifference, so many cynical games, so much hypocrisy, sights that blind me, sounds that deafen me, rendered voiceless, speechless, increduled, can only muster grunts, grunts emanating from the center of my being, causing my heart to lift in prayer to the higher powers. Every rope has an end, no matter its length. Justice is nigh. All are subject to the clock of the universe, sooner rather than later. The next one is Miss Thomas Puss. Now, Puss is cat, of course. And in Jamaica, they have a saying that says, a high seat, kill Miss Thomas Puss. A high chair, kill or made alive Miss Thomas's cat. Because the cat went on this really high chair and it fell off and was made alive. Miss Thomas Puss. Tick tock. Tick tock goes Miss Thomas clock. Miss Thomas psychopathic puss. Not the first and not the last. Drunk with delusions of omnipotency. Sitting on its high seat of hubris. Miss Thomas Puss, not the first and not the last. Sitting on its high seat of hubris, legislating when to cry, legislating when to laugh, legislating what and how to think, legislating the moisture from the sky, dominion over the beasts of the field, dominion over the human animals, dominion over the trees and the grass, dominion over the fowls of the air, dominion over the fish in the sea. Miss Thomas psychopathic puss, not the first and not the last, roaring from its high seat of hubris, open season on the human animals. Let the games begin. Hide and seek. You hide. Puss will seek. Counting 1, 2, 3, not to 10. Puss makes the rules. Ready or not, here Puss comes. Whoops! Peekaboo. Puss sees you. Fooled ya. East, west, north, south. Cornered. No place to run. No place to hide. Open season. Who shall go first? Little one or big one? Pick off by ones or by twos. AI, You decide. No place to run, no place to hide. Better a culling from puss brightened sky. More impressive, more efficient, less time to waste, many more cruel sadistic games to play. Tick tock, tick tock. Miss Thomas' clock just stopped. Whoops! Miss Thomas, omnipotent psychopathic puss, not the first and not the last, just fell off its high seat of hubris. Impotent psychopathic puss, your time is up. The universe keeps ticking. It never stops. Miss Thomas psychopathic puss, not the first and not the last, never again, but yet again, always again. We can go no further than the length of our rope. And the next one, the vampire that is revenge. The vampire that is revenge, with its loyal foot soldiers, followers, and spectators. Psychopaths in suits and uniforms, sanctioned by the halls of power, to kill victims in the thousands and the millions. The mangled and crushed bulldozed bodies, bulldozed while wounded, sick and dying, lying on their beds of rubble, cement and dirt, under their houses of cloth, drenched with rain, the rotting flesh of newborns still attached to useless tubes in incubators, newborns shrouded on beds covered in debris of fallen ceilings, broken glass, shrapnel, and spent shells, the wounded with open worm-filled sores, the headless bodies of children and their dolls. Children and dolls decapitated. Heads blown away as they slept in their beds, flying limbs of dehydrated children, mutilated from the sky as they stand in line waiting for water. The fluid of life denied them by Miss Thomas' psychopathic puss. The carnage, caring for the jackals, hyenas, and vultures, the opportunistic scavengers as they congregate, bulldozers, shovels, and plans for concrete metal-covered pens to corral the human animals, to be surveilled with tools more sophisticated than the branding iron of long ago, but branding nonetheless. The rubbled streets, the graves of so many innocents, bulldozers to crush the helpless and cover the crime, the permanently traumatized, the children whose flesh have been permanently pierced, tattooed with stones, dust, rubble, metal, and wood, all trophies for the vampire that is revenge. Its bloodlust, a bottomless pit. Trophies for the loyal foot soldiers and followers, history's psychopaths and sadists, cloaked in their suits and uniforms, protected and sanctioned by the halls of power. Trophies for the loyal followers, cloaked in their jeans, t-shirts, and dresses. Proof of the power of the wares for the buyer, wares for the spectators, the patrons and eager buyers. A large live showroom for the weapons of destruction and dehumanization. A large showroom for weapons of oppression and slavery, precise and efficient, some not. A large showroom of patrons and eager buyers eager to create their own bloodied knife-point tableaus painted with the bright red, blood of the innocents. Tableaus painted with the white, the yellow, the brown, and the green, and all the other colors in between. Of pus, of sputum, of feces, of urine, pus, sputum, feces, and urine, and other bodily fluids, fluids of the last gasps of the innocents, the last gasps of the sting of death. O death, where is thy sting? O grave of rubble, where is thy victory? Landscapes of raised orchards, groves and vineyards, covered with burnt corpses of animals and birds, landscapes of mounds of rubble dotted with exposed limbs, the graves of those buried alive while they slept in their beds. Landscapes of sewage-filled streets and hospital yards, sewage-filled streets and hospital yards, littered with more than 24,000 rotting corpses, more than 24,000 rotting, maggot-covered corpses, the rotting, maggot-covered corpses of mothers and babies, of fathers and children, of aunts, uncles, and cousins, of brothers and sisters, of grandparents and friends. Tableaus of the more than 60,000 imprisoned and in limbo between the land of the living and the land of the dead. A large showroom for the eager buyers of the art of destruction, so they too can paint their own tableaus painted with the bright red blood of the innocents, tableaus painted with the white, the yellow, the brown, and the green, the white, the yellow, the brown, and the green, and all the other colors in between, of pus, sputum, feces, urine, and other blood bodily fluids of the last gasps of the innocents, the last gasps of the sting of death. O death, where is thy sting? O grave of rubble, where is thy victory? The art of destruction, total destruction, in so little time. The vampire that is revenge, with its loyal foot soldiers, followers, and spectators. History's psychopaths and sadists, cloaked in suits, uniforms, jeans, t-shirts, and dresses. Eager sellers and eager buyers of the art of destruction, all in the service of the great Mammon. Lessons never learned. History, a broken record. History on rewind. History repeats itself, never again, but yet again. Never again, always again. And the fourth one, I did say 4, but it's actually 5. These are not very long. The fourth one is called Our Brother in the Garden. And actually, that brother in the garden was John Kirby, the spokesman for the Pentagon during the Biden administration, who shed tears, and rightly so, for the events of October 7th. Rightly so to shed tears, but let us hear about him. Our brother in the garden. Our brother in the garden, shedding tears for the hundreds, rightly so. So much empathy for these lost innocents, justly and deservedly so. Yet, our brother in the garden, not a tear can he spare for the tens of thousands His cup of empathy is dry, so not a drop left for those, in a sense, the others, the them. Our brother in the garden, why no tears? Why no empathy for the others, the them? Collateral damage, human shields, our brother in the garden says. The wretched of the earth in this go round, the dispossessed, not deserving, not worthy of a tear, our brother chooses not to spare. Not deserving, not worthy of a drop of empathy from his cup. Our brother in the garden, know this. In the eyes of the soul, the others and the them, the collateral damage and the human shields, the dispossessed, the wretched of the earth in this go round, are your brothers, our brothers. There's always a tear to spare. The cup of empathy can never run dry. The capacity to love is endless. That which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself. Our brother in the garden, see your children in the faces of all the children. For every child is yours. Every child is ours. Our brother in the garden, shed your tears for the hundreds and the tens of thousands. Have empathy for all the innocents. That which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself. We are our brother's keeper, without exception. May shrouds of light and a gentle breeze help you find the conscience from which you try to flee, hiding it in the dark behind the rose bush. And the last one, which is number 5, but I did say 4. Sorry about that. Who and what shall you see in the mirror? Let the wheat and the tares grow together until the time of harvest. The harvest has now come. With the tiny shrouds of light, we can now separate the wheat from the tares. The winds of change, long overdue, have arrived and wafted away the smoke. The tiny shrouds of light now illuminate the mirror. My brother, tell me, who and what shall you see in that mirror? Shall you see kettles and pots? Shall you see tares? Shall you see a brother whom you have judged to be bereft of morals, standing far below your perceived and selective moral high ground? Tell me, my brother, when the winds of change have wafted away the smoke and the tiny shrouds of light illuminate the mirror, shall you see a man whose head is bowed, weighed down by the crown of virtue, the crown of virtue too heavy for his head, on his knees, naked, for the cloak, that is the mantle of virtue, has fallen from shoulders too narrow? Shall you see a great pretender to the throne of virtue? Or shall you see neither pots nor kettles? Shall you see only wheat? Shall you see a man who judges no one? A man who knows that two wrongs do not equal right? A man who leads by example without favor or fear? Tell me, my brother, when the winds of change have wafted away the smoke and the tiny shrouds of light illuminate the mirror, shall you see a man standing tall, with his head held high, the crown of virtue aloft, the cloak that is the mantle of virtue perched squarely on his broad shoulders, ascending effortlessly to take his place, a rightful heir to the throne of virtue? Let the wheat and the tares grow together until the time of harvest, when the winds of change have wafted away the smoke and the tiny shrouds that illuminate the mirror. Who and what shall you see in the mirror? Yes, tell me, my brother, who and what shall you see in that mirror? As I stated in that book published in February 2024 and dedicated to children, I mentioned, as I said before, that I've been observing this war from I was a little girl. I was naive as I should have been then. And well, 53 years later, it continues, but now on steroids. It is now or never. This is their last chance to out the lights of the Palestinian people, who refuse to die, much to the chagrin of those who wish to make them unalive and erase them from the records, from this earth. I guess in a way it's sort of like a damnatio memoriae. That's Latin, when we try to erase people from history. Indeed, the pace is a quickening. And as I said, this book that I wrote and these poems that was given to me, I dedicated to my grandmother, Sabel, the protector of children. Well, to all the warriors of justice, they gave this to me, but I dedicated this to my grandmother because she was here in the temporal world with me. And I dedicated it to every child in the world. You have the right to live in dignity and comfort with loved ones, free from violence, fear, and trauma. And in memoriam to every child, everywhere, who has been sacrificed on the altar of the great Mammon, may your sacrifice never be in vain, gone, but not forgotten. Behold, you are the tiny shrouds of light that has illuminated that mirror and has certainly shown us the great pretenders to the throne of virtue and has revealed the truth. And that truth, many truths we are now facing, but after all has been revealed, transition. Thank you for visiting my channel. Please do not forget to subscribe, give a thumbs up for like, share, and leave a comment. And as usual, I like to end with this. None of us is without blemish. And although I appear harsh, I must deliver the messages as I get them. What I do when the collective, as harsh as it sounds, it is trying to exhort all of us to do better and to recognize that we're all brothers and to take care of those who cannot take care of themselves, to take care of the least fortunate, the vulnerable in our society, no matter where they are, no matter the mask, those stupid masks. Hate hitching a ride, hate a contagion, a cancer metastasizing, an opportunistic bacteria, the cloud waiting to block the sun. Hate, waiting to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate, the rat on its rat passage, hitching a ride on the boat to the plague. Hate, the bedbug, waiting for our suitcase. Hate, the roach, riding on our coattails. Hate, the shadow always lurking behind, sometimes longer than us. Just lurking behind the thin curtain, waiting for its turn on center stage to take us to a place not so far away. A blast back from civilization to barbarism, from knowledge back to ignorance, from wisdom back to imprudence. Hate never takes a holiday, always looking for the opportunity to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate inhabits the same house as love within us. May we never try to flee our conscience so that we will always do correct actions. May we learn to walk a mile in our brother's shoes, that we can see the humanity in each other. May we respect the differences in each other and know that our Creator has no chosen few. May we find comfort in the knowledge that each of us is slated for redemption and none is excluded. May we find solace in the knowledge that it is not a question of if, but one of when each of us shall return to our Father. May we know that we're just tenants on the earth, this earth, and take care of each other, the earth and all the creatures that dwell thereon. May we always adhere to the divine principles of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us. Love. May we know that which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. May the tiny shrouds of light forever illuminate our path through the dark. May peace forever reside within us and between us, one divine, universal love.